Liquify Filter is a very useful tool, and it has been around for long in Photoshop, but in Creative Cloud it has been improved. First of all, we can use it as a smart filter, which makes it non-destructive. So let me first do that in this image. So convert for smart filters, and then I go to Filter, Liquify. Once it comes up, you can see that we have tools here on the left side and lots of options on the right side. If you want to simplify it a bit, you can always switch the advanced mode off. I like to have all the options available, although I'm not going to go into great detail on them, but I will still show you the most important features. First of all, here on the left side, the first tool is the forward warp tool, with which you can click and drag to move details around. With this, you can push details in any direction you wish. And the way Liquify does this is by using a very intricate mesh. If you want to see the mesh, you can turn on Show Mesh option, and I can zoom slightly closer. So here you will see when I start making changes, it's actually this mesh that gets distorted, and based on the mesh points, it moves the pixels around. When I hold down the Alt key or Option and paint over details, I can reconstruct the mesh to go back to the original grid, and you see then everything falls back into place. Of course, we can also reconstruct the whole image. So if we click on Restore All, it goes back to the original version of the image without Liquify. There is a tool as well called Reconstruct, that's the second one, but I normally just hold down the Alt key or Option whenever I want to access it. Let me turn off the mesh so we can see exactly what we are doing. You can use the shortcuts we used before for changing the brush size. So either the square brackets or the Control-Alt click and drag left and right. But as a rule, I recommend to use a big brush. So normally Liquify works better with bigger brushes. And when you start moving details around, what you can do after a while, if you feel like the details are not looking perfect, is to switch to this brush called Smooth Tool. You can also press E. Now this I believe is only available in Creative Cloud, so you might not be able to find it in previous versions, but you can see it will look less stretched, which is great. Then we have other tools here as well, like the twirl, with which you can twist details around. If you hold down Alt, you can twist it in the other direction as well. Then the next tool is pucker, which will shrink details to the center point of your brush, so it sucks details in. And the opposite of this is bloat, which will push details away from the point you click on. And this is actually quite cool on these clouds. It actually looks like we are forming clouds here. So this is how normally, if you look at time-lapse videos, the clouds are moving or shaping. And then there is one other useful tool here called Freeze Mask tool. Once that's selected, that's also like a brush with which you can paint over a detail which you want to make sure is not going to be liquefied. And then if I, for example, switch back to the forward warp tool, whenever I make changes, you see that detail won't get distorted. So it keeps it separate from all the other details. So I can easily adjust all these details around it without ever affecting that part. Of course, if you need to remove the mask, you can use the Thaw Mask tool. Adobe is very creative in naming these tools. These are the basics, but now let's see actually how to use it on another image. I'm going to just click OK, and we will see that I completely messed up this cloud. But of course, because it's a smart filter, I can always turn it off, turn it back on. So this was just a simple example, but let's see it on this image here. So she already has lovely long hair, but ladies are fond of their hair, so I'm sure she won't mind if we increase the volume of her hair. So the way we can do that is again by, first of all, turning this into a smart object, or you could use the Convert for Smart Filters option, and then let's choose Liquify. So here I'm going to use the first tool, the Forward Warp tool, increase my brush size, and then I'm going to start dragging these details out. So increasing these details, and with that increasing the volume of her hair. We are actually stretching all these details, but if you are careful and dragging details around the edge and also inside, then you can avoid making it look stretched. So that's the technique. Do it one by one with slow brush strokes, and then also pay attention to the background. Like here I would push these details up just to accommodate and even out anything that was stretched in the background. Even though it's out of focus, it's still important to make sure that it doesn't look retouched. So we can even go further, but I start to feel like this is starting to look not natural. So you should always be careful not to overdo any retouching like this. So try to keep it realistic. And of course, we can also make the hair slightly longer if we want to do that. Once again, be careful not to distort the arm. That's the only thing here I'm going to really be careful about. And of course, remember, we can draw a mask over her arm. So that way we don't affect these details. And even this part here. And I could also do the same thing around these parts. So the face, the earring, so it's not going to get affected. Something like that. And then the forward warp tool. Now we can drag it even further out. Something like that. Now let's click OK to see what we achieved. So if I turn off the Liquify, we can see before and after. Let's zoom out a bit. And once again, before and after. If we feel like we need to improve it, we can double click on Liquify, which will take us back. And I saw again in the background that we still need to adjust this to even out the line in the background. Plus, we can also use the smooth tool at the end. Remember, with the smooth tool, we can refine the details. So wherever it was a little bit too stretched out, the refine tool can even out the details. And that I think really helps in this case as well. So once again, it makes it slightly more realistic. Let's click OK. And let's just compare now this last change with the smooth. So that was before and after the smooth. And this was the original hair, and this is the new one. So that is a very nice example of using Liquify. And I will come back to this tool as part of the workflow when we are going to do the retouching of a portrait. But just as a quick example, I have an image here with these already exaggerated emotions, the happy and sad faces. You can also turn faces into caricatures with this tool very easily, and that's what this tool is famous for. So let's turn this layer also into a smart object and then switch to the Liquify filter. So one of the things we can do here is to exaggerate the eyes, which is already quite big, but we can use the bloat tool for that. And then I'm going to click in the middle, and you can see how quickly we can make it even bigger. So let's just increase it even bigger. And that's probably big enough. Now I'm going to switch to the forward warp tool. And because this is the happy or surprise face, let's increase that smile as well. So drag the corners of the mouth further up like that. We can also maybe make the nose bigger just to make it even more funny, the whole face. We can also drag the nose down. And you can see we can very quickly make changes to faces. If we want to make it look surprised, we can drag the eyebrows up, which will again just make the eyes even bigger. Or if we want, we can mask the eyes, just for this example here. So we can separate it better from the eyebrows. So if I mask the eyes out like that, then I use my forward warp tool and I just drag the eyebrows further up. That way we separate them from the eyes. Like that. Okay. We can always get rid of the mask now. So we only needed the mask for the eyebrows. And then if you feel like something didn't work out as well as expected, remember, use the forward warp tool and hold down the Alt key or Option and paint over those details. Like I can switch back to the nose the way it was, or we can even make it smaller instead. If we want to reduce that feature, we can always make it smaller. That way the mouth looks even bigger. But then of course we can move the whole mouth up a bit further. Don't forget to change the size of your brush. That really matters, what size you are using. And here on the right side, just to do a little bit of changes on the sad face as well, we can really distort that sad mouth. We can also push the eyebrows further down and the eyes. It is hard not to make faces scary after a while, especially that one on the left. But I'm going to click OK, and we can check before and after. So that was before, and this is after. So this was just another funny example of how to use Liquify to turn faces into caricatures. Of course, you can take this even further and refine all these features, but feel free to experiment with Liquify because there's so many other things you can use it for. And as I said, I will come back to it and show you how to use it as part of the portrait retouching workflow. But before we get to that, in the next video, I will show you the content-aware techniques.